Welcome to Night Shift. We got a full house in here. We got Eric Lopez. We got the student of the game, Kyle Nash. We got Andrew Glukov, Stat Boy Drew in the house. We've got my Giants and Kyle's 49ers on TV. Kyle, we're fighting for the next hour and a half.
It's not going to be there either. Anyway.
We've got plenty to talk about. We are in Big 12 season, ladies and gentlemen. Your Knights are playing their first ever Big 12 conference football game this Saturday at the Kansas State Wildcats. We're going to preview that one. What did we learn, if anything, from a game against Villanova? That was not basketball. We'll also catch you up on soccer. Oh boy, if we got a huge. Actually, here's the thing. The biggest football game on Saturday will be for UCF. Will be played in Huntington, West Virginia.
Oh,
UCF men's soccer team faces the number 1 ranked Marshall Thundering Herd.
but I can confirm too. The broadcasters for that will be actually on location, unlike
unlike the Fox guys.
Unlike the game in Manhattan, is that what you're telling me?
And Boise.
And Kent State.
And the Kent State and Orlando game.
Anyway, so lots to talk about on that one. Make sure you follow UCF Banneret_SBN on X, also Black and Gold Banneret on Threads and Instagram, Facebook as well. We got our YouTube channel up and running. Lots to talk about here. Let's dive right in. Gentlemen, 8 o'clock. It is officially upon us. The dream of UCF playing in a power conference is really here. UCF at Kansas State, Saturday, 8 p.m. on FS1. This is the second all-time meeting between UCF and K-State. First one back in 2010. There's some really amazing weather photography from that game. If some of you are familiar, I'm sure. A game that, going back to it, ended well, Andrew, I think we could say UCF'd that one, right? 17-13. Kansas State won with 24 seconds left to go on a late touchdown after a long drive, and a game that UCF had multiple opportunities to kind of put them away and just didn't.
Yeah, very reminiscent of multiple games we've seen, Marshall multiple times.
Same script over and over
Clemson,
again.
I mean, multiple schools that UCF
but you know what?
Punching up against.
You know what? That's all gone now. That's all gone. We're in the Power 5, baby, and it is happening. So, update you on the Kansas State Wildcats. They lost last week on a 61-yard field goal at the gun at Mizzou. So they're 2-1 on the season. This is last year's Big 12 champs. They've beaten Southeast Missouri and Troy so far in the season. But coming off a 10-4 year where they nearly knocked TCU out of the college football playoffs. Some argue they should have. Nonetheless, here comes UCF into Manhattan with a 3-0 record after the defeat of Villanova over this past Saturday. Timmy McClain. All of a sudden, we looked up and he had 321 yards passing, Kyle Nash.
Yeah.
What did we, with a look ahead to this game against Kansas State? Emotional game, first game in the conference, big environment in Manhattan. Granted, you're 3-0, but you're in there with your backup quarterback. Based on what we've seen, what we saw last week from the Villanova game, what can we expect from the UCF offense against Kansas State on the road?
Well, there's two things in particular. Now, granted, there's only so much you can get from a game where Villanova is going to be dominated the way that they are. I mean, I know it's only a matter of time before Eric Lopez uses the S word to describe that contest. But at the end of the day, we saw two things that I liked. Timmy McClain had a poise when he was out of the pocket and trying to make things happen to protect himself. Also, in the face of disaster, when something went wrong, like there was a mishandled snap or something that got fumbled, Timmy McClain picked it up and ran with the beast and got yardage out of it and knew when to push the envelope and when not to, right? So that concept of a young guy without getting turnovers, mind you, even John Rice Plumlee had turnovers against Kent State, right? He did throw the one in. It should have been an interception. I'll grant his first deep ball, but the guy dropped it. Therefore, it doesn't count as a turnover. But no turnovers officially marked for Timmy McClain. And that's something, that I think that's the main things you're hoping for and the best takeaway for Timmy McClain in particular.
Drew, this is UCF has the number 1 total offense in the country through 3 games, but let's put that aside. Number 2 rushing offense in the country, almost 300 yards a game, but they're going up against the number 3 rushing defense in the country. Now, I know it's early, limited sample size, but we all know that the key to this offense is on the ground. So what are we looking to do here?
Well, I mean, it's going to be obvious UCF's going to use the run to set up the pass. They don't want to put too much pressure on Timmy McClain unless they fall behind, in which then they're going to have to start leaning more towards pass. Let me throw a number for you. 4.6. That was the average yards per rush against Villanova, which, when you think about it, is not as good as it should have been. I mean, is it a bad number? No, but they were severely outclassing the Wildcats. It wasn't even close as far as on a talent level, concentration, technique. UCF's offense was just better than Villanova's defense, and that was expected, hence the large point spread. But
RJ Harvey ran for 85 yards.
Yeah, well, one of the things that UCF brings to the table, and they can do that, is the ability to spread the ball around. Harvey 14 carries, Johnny Richardson 10, Jordan McDonald 12, and then even McClain had 9 credited carries himself. He did take a sack, which counts against his total.
Which again, let us all say in unison, stupidest rule in college football.
Stupidest rule in college football. It should count against his passing numbers like it does in the NFL, but say it'll be.
But Drew, enhancing your point real quick, we mentioned that in night class, 9 different receivers, I believe, got a pass from Timmy McClain on the night.
Yeah. Nine guys got stats. I don't think McClain hit them all. I know Dylan Rizzick came out.
You're right.
Have some mop-up duty.
McClain had 7 of them. That's correct. And by the way, you'll find that pointed out in night class on the blackandgoldbanneret.com.
Ding!
Dadgummit.
There it is. Okay.
But you mentioned the passing game. There's a couple guys who haven't really seen much action that they got a chance to not only play but actually make results. Jalen Griffin, Chauncey Magwood. These are a couple guys that really haven't had an opportunity, and they did their job. Griffin with that nice touchdown later in the game. They're not going to have that opportunity against Kansas State. I mean, say what you want. Kansas State is a good team. They may be missing some key offensive pieces, but it doesn't take away from the defense. I don't think the strategy is going to change. They're going to use the run to set up the pass because you have such a large stable of running backs. We didn't even talk about DeMarcus Bowman because he was pretty much non-existent because he was dealing with, if I'm correct, he was dinged up himself.
I mean, goodness, Drew, if your worst running back is Mark Anthony Richards, you're a pretty damn good room, period.
Yeah. Out of the big 3 who ran the game, Harvey, Richardson, McDonald. McDonald had the quietest game, but he also, was doing Wildcat stuff, which usually is very short yardage, which
also artificially brings down your yards per average, Drew. You still accomplish the goal of getting the first down or the touchdown, but it brings down your yards per carry. So something to think about.
It does. And one other thing is on the running game, normally UCF's, prone to get that really big run.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they really didn't have one. They had a 24-yarder by Harvey. That was the longest rush of the game, which, he can explode on any given play. Johnny Richardson can explode on any given play if he doesn't outrun his own legs, which has dogged him his entire career at UCF. They did what they did with a lot of smaller plays. That's going to put a lot of pressure on the offensive line. It was very methodical. They're going to a lot of pressure on the offensive line. We did see a little bit of adjustment on the line during the game. players being substituted. We're now seeing there's maybe a little competition at center. I think Kyle should talk about that.
Well, there's always been competition at center. There were 3 guys fighting for the position, and at one time in the spring, Lukahi Paoli was even taking snaps as well as a 4th potential guy. So yeah, this isn't an example where if you have 3, you don't have 1. No, you got a competition of solid players in the middle. This is what we were talking about, Drew, or rather I should say Coach was talking about a few weeks back when he said where he thought the depth grew the most was on the offensive line. And we saw evidence of that in Boise State, if you ask me.
And
I want to go ahead.
FBS level, that you're going to see that, Kent State's barely FBS in name only at the moment. But that road game, that you can't, you have trouble getting those assignments called out because of noise. UCF was tested in that Boise State game. Should have been a blowout, but unforced errors. So they're going to really have to nail down the unforced errors, or else it could be a very long game.
Goodness, Drew, those even felt like anomalies for more than errors. That only happens the way it did in a short field, and of course, both of them happened in the red zone. One in the end zone itself. So I think that's something that this game against Villanova was also important for. We keep talking about Timmy McClain. How about Javon Baker and Kobe Hudson getting their confidence back? Huh?
It's all about focus. You got to maintain the focus. You got the ball in your hand. You're thinking something else. You lose focus for a moment. That's all it takes.
Elo, I want to get you in on this because you tend to throw the wet blanket on the whole situation.
He is a ray of sunshine.
Hold on. I'm the guy that says UCF's winning 9 games going to the Pop-Tart Bowl. I'm the optimist. You guys are the ones that are making excuses for the team.
Okay, so let me ask you this. We're 3-0, I think. How many people thought that
a lot of people? They should be 3-0
before the season started?
A lot of people did. Like,
really? I thought that because I thought that the game at Boise was a 50-50 game.
I think a lot of people that will be a telling game if you can get to 3-0. But I think a lot of people, by the time we got to that game, you expect to win that game. The days of playing Boise and being like, oh, I hope we can win. Those are over now. Those days are over.
Jeff, in the reality, it was a 50-50 game. The way that it played out. I mean, we won on a game.
We won that coin flip. Yeah. There is one thing. Go ahead, Eric. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm saying the thing now, though, is I think this team can compete for the Big 12 championship. This is a down year for the league. I'm not serious. Odds makers have them as the 4th pick in the Big 12. The Big 12 is garbage this year. Garbage.
They have choked.
It's off to it. Let's put it this way, Eric. It's off to a bad start.
It is. It's a terrible. TCU's not very good. Houston might be the worst team in the league. That's a whole other story. Kansas State is banged up.
Right.
They're going to be without their. They're going to be without their best linebacker, Daniel Green, who's out for the year. He's their leader. They're down to a freshman, a true freshman now. That's going to start at linebacker, middle linebacker, with a walk-on behind them. Their starting quarterback, Will Howard, is a game time decision.
Right.
They can't win if he doesn't play. Like, they were terrible without Will Howard last year. So
Trayshawn Ward, your boy from Florida State, also the running back,
he's doubtful.
He's doubtful for this.
He's doubtful. So this is not the same Kansas State team from last year that had Deuce Vaughn, who's now with the Dallas Cowboys, that won the Big 12. This is a down year for the league right now. And again, it's early, but Texas and Oklahoma are right now the front runners for the Big 12 title game. The question is,
I'm pretty sure it's Texas at this point too. I don't know how many people have confidence in Brett Venables.
Well, but Oklahoma, in fairness to your point, hasn't played anybody yet. So they're not going to play anybody this weekend. They're at Cincinnati. So to your point,
we're going to play the Fighting Emory Joneses.
Yeah, Emory Jones. Ooh, I'm scared. So there's opportunities here for UCF. There's opportunities for them to win 8-9 games. There's a reason why Gus has brought in all these transfer guys.
Not off the table. 9 wins is not off the table.
And it should be optimistically what you shoot for.
I'll say
this. What that word expect.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm at. I said 6 wins. I would have said 3-0 reluctantly with that Boise State being 50-50, as it turned out to be, as we pointed out here. But that 9 game concept, if UCF does what they're supposed to do and Baylor's continuing to struggle,
Because you have 3 games that are legit going to be tough.
Yeah.
Oklahoma.
Yep.
Texas Tech.
Yep.
And even though it's still it's early.
Don't say Gundy. Don't say the
No.
Pokes.
I'm saying this Saturday, Kansas State.
I agree with that. Yeah.
This is going to be a tough game.
UCF.
I would throw
a good road team.
I would throw Kansas. I would throw Kansas in there because they might have the best quarterback in the league.
I was going to say
healthy.
if you at gunpoint, if you were asking me which game is tougher, Kansas State or Kansas, I would say Kansas.
With the state that Kansas State is in now,
the health. Yeah, I might agree with that.
And Andrew's favorite head coach in history, Lance Leipold.
I am the chairman of the Lance Leipold fan club in Florida.
The poll for Lance Leipold. There we go. Boom.
There is one thing, and I want to get your guys' take on this, that concerns me, and I can't believe I'm saying this because I think the defense has been playing well above expectations so far. They've been fantastic this year. Except in one area, and it's the area that got them last year, actually the last few years, and that is they just aren't forcing enough turnovers.
Oh, that right was now, UCF, I was going to hit.
Oh, okay. Well,
they're actually forcing more than last year.
Well, in 3 games though, they're UCF is -2 in the turnover.
Well, that's because we've turned it over a lot.
That's because the offense turned it over,
which is a big concern
against Kent State.
That's a concern. That's a concern because Timmy McClain, we don't know anything. I don't throw out Villanova. Nobody cares. This is where we're going to find out what Timmy McClain can do this weekend at Kansas State against an experienced front. Can he protect the football? To your point, Drew, right? That was what you were alluding to. Unforced errors. Timmy McClain's going to have to play a clean game. That could be the difference in this game if both teams have to play their backup quarterback.
Yeah. Now, what I will say though, Eric, is that all right. 2 of the 5 turnovers UCF has lost this year were touchdowns in the Boise State game. 2 others were just JRP saying I got greedy in the Kent State game.
And one would have been a touchdown.
One of them would have been a touchdown, but he did get greedy. The part that concerns me though is the fact that with UCF playing the style of offense that it plays, when you've played Villanova and Kent State in 2 of your 3 games and you've only forced 3 total turnovers, to me that's not enough. I would feel a lot more comfortable if they had forced multiple turnovers in both of those games against a weaker opponent.
I will enter my inner Brian Murphy here because this is what Brian would say on this show. Turnovers are random. You could hit a guy from a specific spot, and one guy might fumble, the other guy
turnovers are random.
Some of that is luck.
Fumbles are random.
Some of those are luck.
And he's right about that.
But some of that is luck. I wouldn't, again, we're reading way too much into Kent States and the Villanovas of the world. What matters is what happens when you're playing equal competition. And look, you could say a turnover is fluky. It doesn't mean it won't cost you the game. So we can make excuses for why the turnovers happen. The bottom line is, and Drew makes the point, you can't make those throws, you can't make those plays in Manhattan or on the road, or you're going to get beat. I mean,
here's what's absolutely correct, though, and it's on this front. If there's a place where Kansas State in particular is weak, it's the backup quarterback, the state of the skill positions behind the line, such as they are. And this defensive tackle spot is the deepest on the entire roster, and it's not close in my opinion, and they're the ones causing the turnovers. Cornerbacks under pressure have thrown crap balls, and the secondary has taken advantage. Mask has 2 interceptions, and I forget who has the 3rd, but the punchline's this. That is what they need to take advantage of to try to get the luck to break their way to get the turnovers. Remember, while Addison Williams is more aggressive than his counterpart last year in TUL, he is still a bend-don't-break defense style guy from what we've seen so far.
But how many times have we seen defenders drop passes, for example, that could have been interceptions? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that plays into it. One thing I am curious, what you both say, offensively. I mentioned the issues with the linebackers of Kansas State. Missouri, I watched that Missouri game. They burned them with big plays. And by basically fooling the linebackers, UCF likes to run a lot of motion, Timmy McClain. I think you got to attack the linebackers. Do you not got to agree with me? Attack the linebackers, put them in coverage, make them make plays, put pressure on them. I think you're going to see Henshaw and Gus do that early.
Well, you got to go after the weak link. And you were saying they're hurt at middle linebacker, right, Eric? So Like it's sort of like a reverse Bill Belichick. You go after the weak link.
And as much as they pull the guards off of here, Lukahi Peuli against one of these guys, you're going to get a big hit run. Don't be surprised if RJ Harvey breaks off something bigger than that 24-yarder.
That's what I'm
not only that, but you have to look at third down conversions. That's the big one.
Yep.
Going into this game, UCF is 12th at 54.1%.
That's on offense.
On offense, Kansas State is 19th at 52.4%. So both can get it done. Look at UCF's defense as far as third down conversions. Kent State went 7 of 17. Boise State went 6 of 14, both under 50%.
Those opponents are a little high.
Oh yeah, they're a little suspect.
Well, and we're talking about run defense too, fellas. I mean, at what point did the game become out of hand, and then they had to start chucking it to bring the running numbers down?
Boise State.
I agree with
that game never got out of hand.
No. I'm talking about on Kansas State is allegedly the best run defense statistically in the Big 12, but it's based on playing Troy and whoever the hell else it was.
But they do have a lot of experience. They have a lot of experience, 5th-year guys, 6th-year guys in the line, both Kansas State. We're going to learn a lot more about the UCF line, both in the offensive line, defensive line, starting this weekend. Again,
that's the statement, Elo, right?
We need to erase anything that happened the first 3 weeks. Doesn't matter. Does not matter one iota.
To answer Kyle's question, because obviously they were 3rd in total rush defense. They are 5th in average yards per rush given up at 1.82 yards a carry, or 1.83 yards a carry. So, I mean,
against Troy and who?
Troy, SEMO, and Mizzou.
That includes Missouri.
Okay.
So, that's.
Well, that's going to be an interesting deal, too. Kansas State's coming off the game against Missouri. They tested themselves, whereas UCF, like I said, had scrimmage. Does that favor UCF? Does that favor Kansas State because he just got tested last week? That's going to be interesting to see early on.
Tested and unhealthy, Eric Lopez.
Right. Right. I mean,
they got beat
to
up
me, if you UCF, this is almost a must-win because how often are you going to get a team this
No,
I'm serious. Do you want to make a statement? Are we in to win this? Or are we just here just for the show? Do they want to make a statement? This is an opportunity.
How is it a must-win game if we just earlier this time 3 weeks ago we're talking about making a bowl game as a successful season?
Because these guys want to get to Jerry's World. They don't give a crap about going 6-6. They want to get to Jerry's World. Thankfully, they don't listen to us nonsense. They want to win big, and thankfully, if they want to do that, this is a big step in doing that to get off to that start. Because I think they'll be favored against Baylor. Kansas is toss-up, bye week, and then obviously I don't even want to get into Oklahoma yet. But they're winnable games. Oklahoma State, they're going to be favored. Houston, they're favored. I think they got 6-7. West Virginia's favored. They should really have 6-7 wins in their pocket by now. The question is, can they execute, to Drew's point? Because I could also see a scenario where you guys are talking out on the post-game show about how UCF turned the ball over 4 times and didn't convert in the red zone.
I'm extremely reluctant to call any road conference game a must-win. Unless it's a really down opponent like USF the last few years.
No, but this team is banged up. It is a banged up team.
To Elo's point,
I think what you really mean to say is the door is much more open than we thought it would be.
Like if Howard doesn't play, they're going to play Avery Johnson, who's a true freshman, is a dual threat guy. That's a golden opportunity to take advantage of.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
If you can't win, if you can't beat them with Avery Johnson, then I think there's a lot of questions about who this team is.
I mean, it is a defending champion we're talking about.
They're not who they were though.
At home.
Is Deuce Vaughn dressing up? He ain't dressing up Saturday for us.
Yeah, but the other guys over there also are on scholarship.
Not all of them. They're pretty good. They lost a good chunk of players from that team last year. As you all know, every year it's a different team. That doesn't matter. Last year's
doesn't mean that Kansas State suddenly sucks, Eric.
No. But if you're UCF and they have big goals internally, forget what the media.
Everyone has big goals internally.
No, not you guys. And thank God they do.
Think they can win the conference. Come on.
Correct. So if you want to get there, You got to win a game like this. You can't just say, well, we lost this game, we'll make it up later. No, you can't assume that. Take advantage of this opportunity that's presented to you. If you're a good team, good teams take advantage and win this game.
Yeah,
Put it that way.
They're going to have
That's a much
to.
better statement than must win, but go ahead, Drew.
Yeah.
The key is they have to establish the line of scrimmage.
Yes, agreed.
You're looking at all the games. The best that a team did against them was Missouri, 28 rushes, 74 yards on the ground. UCF's going to have to try to establish that line of scrimmage, and if it doesn't work, they have to pivot because Kansas State is susceptible to the pass. Their pass, they even gave up over 200 yards in the air to Southeast Missouri. They can give up yards in the air.
Yeah, 106th in the country in team or in passing yards allowed, 264.3.
Right.
So then they're so high on run defense because no one's doing it because they don't have to. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, but Missouri did pass for over 350 yards against them. So you know what? You've got these great receivers, at UCF. We don't have to rehash that.
Yeah.
So you know what? Go over the top. Run the ball, bring them up, make them commit to the run, and just go over the top.
But you got to think Kansas.
Hold on. Screw that, Drew. I think if Gus really wants to surprise people, come out and throw the damn ball. They think you're going to run that beat.
Well, you're both right. How about this, though? What if Kansas State says stack the box, dare you to throw?
That's what I'm saying.
It's a backup quarterback. They're going to do that.
Throw.
Right.
But you know what?
Again,
Give me time. Let's go.
Well, that's the thing. Who is Timmy McClain? What can he do? Can he do enough?
That's my next question. Is how do we? And I want to go to Kyle on this first. Timmy McClain, great amount of curve, playing against an FCS opponent, but did what he was supposed to do. Right, 28-28, 321. I'll be honest with you. I was a little surprised when I looked at the box score at the end of the game. He threw for 321 yards.
Yeah,
it didn't feel like a 321-yard game, right? But
there was an element of yak to it. I'll grant you, and he did have. And listen, he should have had more. A sure touchdown, in my opinion, that was dropped late in the game. Although I think it was Rizek that had that one. But even still, there
was one called back on a penalty, wasn't there?
There was a touchdown called back on a penalty. They eventually scored that one.
Right.
Later on, so the yardage would still be accounted for.
So we had to score twice on that drive. Anyway,
but basically, yeah, right. Although the call in question was completely trash on, you're throwing a block in the back.
All right, let's not, we let you go on the rant on the post.
Eric is like, no. I'm going to be the one who criticizes the officials, not you.
No, I like Kyle do it on the post game show. I mean, we don't need again. We're waiting. The highlight of the Villanova game. We're hiding the only thing that was worth exciting about the Villanova game is that we got to hear Jeff on the PA during the ESPN Plus broadcast because they had technical issues. That was the highlight to me right there. People loved it. They were like, hey, can we just get we should do an alternate broadcast with no broadcaster since they're not going to be there for Fox. Just go with the ambient sound.
I'm not opposed to that.
Can they just mic up Jeff and just have it flow right through him?
We heard him loud and clear, Drew, on Saturday. It was pretty loud and clear.
I'm glad I'm finding that out now.
Yes, go back, tune into the Drew Felios wasn't happy about it, but
because if you screwed up, you would have heard about it. See,
I guess I must have done pretty good. If no one told me, hey, you're on national television, right? What?
Oh yeah. They had some technical issues, Drew Felios and Forrest, so they weren't on for the first 8-10 minutes. So you get to hear Jeffrey. That's a Knights first down.
Yeah. So Jeff, welcome to the 15 seconds of fame on ESPN Plus.
Yeah, I'm ESPN Plus famous.
You
apparently,
Elo already got your turn, right, Drew? Anyway.
Well, how many times has Elo taken advantage of my talent?
Well. Anyway, before we give our predictions here,
that'll never get old.
I want to talk about the line real quick. It opened. This is interesting. It opened Kansas State -5, bumped up to Kansas State. This is according to OddsShark. Bumped up to K-State -7.5 earlier this week, and then it started dropping, and it's currently -3.5. Kansas State. Ostensibly, Eric, you were talking to us before because of the injuries to Kansas State. Predictions, Drew. I'll start with you.
I'm going to
what are we thinking
the
here?
Assumption that they're going to be missing some players. Howard's going to be out. The running back's going to be out. I'm going.
And if they're not out, they're going to be
not at 100%. But I'm going with the assumption that they're not playing based on that. So I think UCF's going to tighten up some of the mistakes that they made against Boise State. I've got them winning 31-17 because Kansas State's just going to have offensive problems. And while UCF's not going to run away with it, they are going to wear down this defense because they're going to just be on the field too much.
Shout out to UCF defense if they hold Kansas State to 17 points at home, by the way.
Real quick, because I alluded to it, but we kind of pivoted away. UCF's defense has to work on their outside containment.
Yes.
Big time.
Yeah.
It has been not good.
That could be a factor if Johnson gets to play the freshman. He's a dual threat kid if it's not Howard. So to your point,
and UCF has problems with dual threat quarterbacks, but the outside containment has been especially suspect these first 3 games.
Kyle?
I don't know that. Well, it depends on what they're doing up front too. I think when they have elements of Salascar and Trayvon Morris Brass too far inside, when they're running 3-4 instead of 4-3, that's when you had that happen, Drew. I think you're alluding to that as well.
Yeah, the 4-3 has been a lot more effective than the 3-4.
And give credit to Salascar and Brass both. For such big guys, they sure contain the outside pretty well. But to Elo's point, it's completely different when you got a speed demon out there. I can make an argument, gentlemen, that Boise State provided more defense than what they might get from an injured group overall in Kansas State, but I'm not going to right this instant because I haven't seen the film on them yet, I'll be honest. But for my money, death, taxes, the over in the Big 12, they're going to get more than 17 points, Drew. No offense. I got 30-24 UCF.
Eric?
What is the over-under?
52.
Bam.
Kyle's right, going over. Wow. I'm with Drew. I'm with Drew. I just don't. If Howard doesn't play, I just don't see how Kansas State moves the ball.
You just explained it, Elo.
I just don't think it. I think the defensive line will kind of control them. I think it's a 24. Now turnovers can play. I think turnovers. Give me that category. Whoever wins that turnover category wins this game. I would assume that
turnovers. I agree. If it's one, somebody could still come back.
Yeah. If Howard does play, I think it's a 4-point game either way. I'm going to take UCF regardless. If Howard doesn't play, I think UCF wins 24-10, 27-17, something like to that extent, and win this game. And maybe they'll get a vote in the AP.
You're on the low end of the point total there too. Is it lack of faith in the offense or?
Well, yeah, but you could have potentially 2 backup quarterbacks playing, and we don't know. There's a lot of mystery there. Like. I agree. I know what Kyle means. Big 12, usually you go over. I would stay away from the over-under in this game personally because I don't know what I'm getting.
That's fair.
I don't know.
Fair.
I don't know what I'm getting.
Speaking of which, this will be our last bit on football. What is it going to take for UCF to get into the top 25 right now?
Get back to the American.
Not winning this game. Not winning this game because all everybody will do is criticize how hurt they were.
Yeah, it's not going to be this game. They're not going to get ranked anytime soon.
Beating Kansas will get them votes. I didn't say ranked. I said votes.
Beat Oklahoma, you get ranked.
Oh, well,
there's only 2 Big 12 teams ranked currently. My bigger issue: can we just get on a broadcast network? Can we get Let's just focus on getting on a broadcast network where we actually have broadcasters.
About that, you make a point about that, Eric, because I did want to talk about the TV FS1 again this week. Honorary UCF alumni Eric Collins and Devin Gardner on the call for the 3rd time in 4 games. I'm very reluctant to criticize broadcasters because, and when I say broadcasters, I mean networks because, look, it's a hard business. But they got these guys pulling double duty on Saturday. Is that right?
That is correct.
I mean, I don't know if has anyone ever done that before. I think pretty sure.
Yeah, no. This is very common with FS1 and football season. It is very common. It's not the first year they've done this. They've done this really since COVID. They have done this for a while. They're not stopping anytime soon. They save money on this, and their argument is that the audience.
But ESPN doesn't do that.
Not anymore.
Largely.
No.
They largely don't.
Yeah.
So
there's.
What's Fox's problem here?
I mean, that's a Fox. That's a question for Eric Shanks and company. I'm not Eric Shanks. I wish I were, because we would be awfully doing very well for ourselves. But no, I mean, in fairness,
I don't know who we're going to. I mean, well, listen. Clearly, someone has complained to the right people because it got moved up the chain, and Rupert Murdoch resigned today. So
I didn't know Rupert Murdoch was making the football schedule, but okay. I mean, that's news to us. That's cool. Look, I think the bigger issue the Big 12 has right now. Their TV deal for football ain't great. If you look at ESPN, they're going to be behind the SEC and the ACC. You look at Fox, they're going to be behind the Big 10. Go watch Big Noon Kick. Go watch a game day. Nobody's talking Big 12. So that's an issue. Now you're putting these games on FS1, FS2. There's a very good chance if UCF loses to Kansas State this Saturday and Baylor gets walloped by Texas, there's a very good chance that game's going to be an FS2 game. FS2.
That's more ESPNU.
No, ESPNU actually brings more audience than FS2.
People don't even know FS2 exists.
We have a bigger audience than FS2.
By the way, Big Noon featuring Deion Sanders as much as it is, that's pulling a lot of it in. Ergo, it's Deion Sanders' fault. UCF.
Well, I'll tell you, Brett Yormark can't wait till Colorado gets here, because that's going to be the team they're going to showcase.
Yeah, as long as Deion's still there.
He'll be there next year.
He'll be there. Yeah, next year.
He's not going to be one and done. He'll be there. He'll be there probably.
Right, because his kid will be there, and Travis Hunter, more important.
Travis Hunter is the deciding thing for me.
Right, and Hunter Kid, right.
They'll finish their careers at Colorado, and then he'll move on. Now,
then he'll move. Well, the question is where? Florida State or the NFL?
Well, it really depends on what opens up.
The NFL.
It all depends on what opens up and what. But I have to disagree. Everyone's saying, "Oh, they have to beat Oklahoma to get ranked." I disagree.
I do.
Yeah. If they're undefeated after beating Kansas,
I agree, Drew.
They will.
Well, it depends. Well, it depends.
Kansas receiving votes. Kansas State receiving votes, so they're already on the radar.
Here's the part that I think maybe you, Drew, and Eric are both omitting is how UCF would beat it. If it's two close games, I don't think. But
those are road games?
For the sake of argument, what if UCF walks into Kansas State and whacks them, and then throws 50 on Baylor, and Baylor doesn't throw 50 of their own because it's the Big 12, and then beats Kansas in a tight one.
Drew made a good point. So 31-17 over K-State. Does that get them good stock, Jeff?
I mean, they'll get them votes. It's not going to get them ranked.
31-17.
Yeah, not right now.
I don't think that'll get them votes.
They'll be in the RV column, but I think people will be like, okay, wait, let's see what they do.
Yeah, RV votes they'll get, but I don't.
They're going to get the benefit of the attrition of other schools losing games.
Maybe that's your best defense, but I'm still remembering. Listen, UCF are villains out there, y'all. Y'all keep forgetting that.
It's not even.
Well, the bigger issue.
The villain's more in the fan base.
But are we villains now that we're the underdogs again in the Big 12?
No, they're not, Kyle. No, they're not. No.
Nah, I think
when they're bringing back up the national championship argument, all that crap from 6 years ago. Yes, UCF is still villains in the eyes of the.
Here's the problem, though. Here's the problem.
Conversation.
The problem is that story's over. They're no longer in the American. They're in the Big 12. They're just another Power 5 school now. We're just another power.
Hearing about this story, and they're using it to dig into the.
I think you're reading way. That's like
voters.
I agree. I can't believe you've managed to pull this off, Kyle Nash. But I'm actually agreeing with Eric Lopez on this.
Thank you.
Well, hey, listen. All three of you have the right to be wrong. That's cool. But at the end of the day,
if that narrative still mattered,
don't matter.
It's not just
the writers. It's not the
writers are homer as hell too, man. Stop it.
The SIDs. It's not them.
Well, he's thinking about Drew's talking about the coaches poll.
I'm talking about all both polls.
I don't think SIDs vote in the media.
You don't think there's a homer element to these writers, buddy? Come on, listen. We know some guys.
Of course, there's a homer element. They actually have to put in who their teams are. As if you look it up, it has
there is a homer element, but I think that evens out.
But it evens out. Here's the thing: if you're 5-0, you or 6-0, you beat Kansas, you beat Kansas State, you beat Baylor.
You're changing the conversation, though. You realize I'm saying Kansas State won't get them votes.
No,
if they beat Kansas, they will get votes. They will get ranked.
They'll get, and they'll get.
It's Kansas' record at that point, though. That's the problem. We don't. Kansas plays Texas before that. Does Kansas get trounced by Texas? I mean, there's a lot of variables.
There's a lot of, but the thing is, if a 6-0 UCF squad, because you're going to have attrition elsewhere.
How do we get to 6-0 already?
I know. We haven't even gotten to 4-0 yet.
Yeah, let's get to 4-0 first.
The original point was, by the time they beat Kansas, if they run the table until that point, they will be ranked.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Okay.
Right, going into Oklahoma, right. Going into Oklahoma, but then you lose to Oklahoma, and then you get bounced out again.
Yeah,
here's another one that I want to bring up here. Is the Big 12 getting railroaded a little bit by the voters?
No, they've earned the fact that
K-State is third out of the top 25. TCU is right behind them. Kansas is RV. BYU's RV. Kansas State there lost to Mizzou, dropped them from 15th to out of the rankings.
Correct.
Yeah, that's a little much.
To Mizzou. That's a little much to me. No,
Missouri's a bottom SEC team.
Also, the Pac-12 is having a ridiculously good year, and that's completely throwing the scales off. Everybody's got it hot for the Pac-12 because they're in the news for their conference crap and
they started 13-0.
Whole lot of
admit it, Kyle. The Atlantic Coast Conference is doing pretty well too, sir. Beating up.
Who other than FSU?
Okay,
Miami's ranked in the top 25. Duke's in the top 25.
I should clarify one thing that UCF is, by the way, receiving votes in the coaches poll.
Yeah, they got
you're ripping the SIDs, Drew.
But in the SID poll.
But Jeff, Kansas State is the top receiving vote getter in the coaches poll for now. But that's not that that's not going to be ignored. Say
that's fair. If Kansas, I don't know what Kansas' schedule is between now and the UCF game, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. But if Kansas wins out going into, first of all, they would have to beat Texas. I don't think they're going to beat Texas. But if, let's say, they only have one loss,
then Texas,
you're right. That might help. But also, here's what doesn't help. This ain't basketball. If this was Bill Self, then yes, you would get absolutely be ranked if you beat Kansas.
But you have to look at the other games being played.
Thank you.
UCLA plays Utah. UCLA's 25th. Utah is one of the top.
Mind you, both Oregon State and Washington State are ranked in the top 25.
They're both good. Oregon State's good.
Washington State playing Oregon. Oregon State is
Duke is 3-0 in their rank.
And we can claim Utah though, right? They're ours, right? They're ours.
Iowa.
Well, if that's the case, then you got to claim Colorado, and they're 19th.
Damn right, prime time. I'm a prime time guy. Me and Kyle.
But let me put it this way, Drew. Let me ask you this part. Florida is 25th in the AP,
which is a joke.
You mean to tell me that the only two teams in the Big 12 that are better than Florida on a neutral field at this point in the game are Texas and Oklahoma?
Well,
probably right now,
the SEC bias is something.
Florida beat Tennessee, who's in the. I'm sorry that you guys don't like the polls, but that's how this works. You got if you beat a good team.
Tennessee is not what.
Tennessee was overrated AF, and
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm not disagreeing with that.
The year 3 of Josh Heupel syndrome is starting to catch on.
But here's the reality: you guys are foreseeing the future. The Southeastern Conference and the Big Ten are going to get the benefit of the doubt. Everybody else fights for scraps when we get into the playoff. This is nothing new.
Unless you're Pac-12 and you have
other than a handful of schools, everyone has played basically 3 games. You're still a lot of shaking out. You haven't got into the conference schedule with the cannibalization.
Could be worse. Could be worse.
Miami hasn't completely tanked at home yet. So
patience. They haven't had their ACC slate, but again, Iowa plays Penn State, Ole Miss, and Alabama. What if Alabama loses another game? Are they going to still be ranked 2-2?
If Alabama loses another game, like the state might fall into the Gulf of Mexico.
Don't rule it out, gentlemen.
How many G5 teams are ranked, Drew?
That would be none.
Oh,
0.
Ouch. Get used to that, G5. Suckers.
Look at
wait a minute, Eric. Oregon State and Washington State, like I said, are both ranked. They're basically G5 now.
Not right now. They're not. Not for another.
Nah, the
7 months.
roster hasn't had a chance to change yet. All that stuff happened after the fact.
Oh,
But
you mean to tell me they haven't joined the Mountain West yet?
They haven't joined
No,
anybody
in fact,
yet. They haven't joined.
there's some interesting things coming on the pipe of things they may try to do.
All right, let's not get into that, please.
But
Let's
Oh, really?
no,
You can
that's
have
not-
an entire show dedicated
Yeah.
to just that stuff.
Yeah,
And Elo will
it doesn't
host it next
involve
week.
UCF at all.
sure. You guys, let me know.
But
That's
the point goes back to the fact that conference play is just starting, and there
Sure.
will be cannibalization.
No, you're right
things
about that.
Are going to shift. Will they gain votes with a win Saturday? Yes. They already have them, the coaches. They're not going to lose them at this point.
You
because
listening,
they're
Matt
punching up.
Burchell? We're depending on you, buddy.
They're punching up at this point against Kansas State.
Kyle, come on, put in a good word
Yep.
for us, all right?
Well, hey,
Villanova,
I
Kansas-
talk to Marcel
Kansas
all the
State.
time. Campaigning for him is not going to work, my guy.
Actually, to Matt's credit, he's probably the one out of all the folks in the media that I've met in my years. He's the one who's most impervious to outside influence.
I'm not.
Yes.
I'm not going to name names in any of that in the conversation, but he has told me about prominent people saying, "Hey, you voted for us, right?" And him looking them right in the face and saying, "No."
Oh, I could see that. Yeah,
Yeah, I can see
I
that.
like that.
And I totally dig that.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's a
that's fine with me.
shovel. Matt Burchell's a bad mamma jamma, dude.
I mean, I'll go all excavator on that one.
Yeah, I'd want him making my final putt on the 77.
Dude, if I could campaign him to join the CFP, I'd be all in on that, Jeff.
Yeah. Anyway, 8:00 kick on Saturday on FS1 with broadcasters somewhere else. UCF and the Kansas State Wildcats. All right. However, I will say in this segue, gentlemen, that may be only the second most significant football game that UCF is playing.
Football
Game that UCF is playing at that
Proud of you,
exact time.
Proud of you there.
7:15 on Saturday night. Your number 3 ranked UCF men's soccer team is playing their Sun Belt Conference rival, Marshall Thundering Herd, who are ranked number 1 in the coaches poll. Bryson Turner has come in to join us to talk about this for a little bit. And Bryson, this men's soccer program right now, first of all, this is the highest ranking for any UCF team in history right now. Is that right?
Ties track and field, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay,
Because track, I think, was number
Track and field's got a weird ranking system, baby. This counts.
Well,
That's just
okay.
on the field, baby.
Okay, so let's put it this way. Highest ranking in a coaches voted poll. All right. They tied West Virginia 2-2 in their Big 12 debut. That was number 5 versus number 4.
Sun Belt.
I'm sorry, Sun Belt.
There it is, Drew. You called it, Drew, right there.
I
Put
knew
it on
it.
the bucket
I knew
list.
it.
There it is.
In
It
their
wasn't even a Big 12 team. If there was any time to do it, this was the time.
I was half right. Anyway, so they come into this game with the number 1 team in the country, Marshall, who won a national championship a couple years ago. The Knights are 4-0-2, and their only draws so far were against 2 top or top 10 adjacent teams, FIU and West Virginia. So against this Marshall team, they're pretty. I mean, they're number 1 for a reason. What did we learn from the West Virginia match, Bryson? And what are we looking to see here? Obviously, a win in Huntington would be great, but it's a tall order against a very good team.
Oh, it very much is. Marshall is the number 1 team for a reason. And let's not forget that, according to the coaches, West Virginia still has a bit of an edge over UCF because they're number 2 now, which means that the Sun Belt Conference now has number 1, 2, and 3
They're basically the SEC.
Because there is no SEC in
Because
men's
there is
soccer.
no SEC for men's soccer. Anyway,
Very
carry
true.
on.
But during the West Virginia game, it was a very interesting game to watch because all of the scoring basically happened in the first half. They did a very good job responding. Luca Dorado got another goal for him to tie, or Matisse Baisalo there for I believe 32 goals on his career there, and then Zane Bubb got the corner to tie it up, which would end up being the goal that would force the draw because the defense that was shown in the second half was quite frankly very well done on both ends. Wambi Munoz did a great job manning the net. I think honestly, if you see that kind of defense against Marshall, then I think that there is a chance. Now, obviously, that was at home. This is in Huntington against a Marshall team that was a national championship. So this is the best of the best right here. I would gladly take a draw in this game but if you beat Marshall, then I really do think that there's a College Cup consideration to be had here, because Marshall has not lost a game and has not tied a game this season. Marshall is the only team in the nation, if I recall,
unbeaten and untied.
Yeah. Right, unbeaten and untied. So Marshall
this is a high octane Marshall team. All right, they're number 1 in the country in goal differential. They're plus 22 on the year. They're number 1 in the country in shots on goal per game at 8. They're number 3 in the country in assists per game. Number 3 in points per game. Number 1 in scoring offense. 3.5, better than 3.5 goals per game. This kind of reminds me of Eric of the halcyon days of Cal Jennings when he was over here at UCF.
Yeah, right? Marshall, up tempo team. I mean, this could be a similar style to the SMU UCF matches. What's interesting, I talked to my Marshall guy who does some of the broadcast over there. Marshall's going to be a little shorthanded this weekend. Their match against JMU, they had 10 cards against their players. 3 of their players got red carded.
Yeah.
Which means they're out. They're out for this game, and including one of their key players. So I don't know what that means. We don't know what their depth is and stuff like that. But they're not going to be at 100% strength. So obviously, they've got a good environment. They're interesting to see how UCF comes out there. They have the depth. They got pushed with West Virginia. They've been tested. They played at Clemson. It's a fascinating matchup, and it is significant because if UCF were to get a result, win this match, I actually think they'll leapfrog West Virginia and jump to number 1 by beating Marshall at Marshall. If they get a draw, they won't jump West Virginia. I think West Virginia at that point would be number 1, assuming West Virginia wins, which we don't even know.
This is in the coaches poll you're talking about.
Yeah. So, or as Drew calls it, the SID poll. Do they vote? Did the SIDs vote in the soccer poll, Drew?
I imagine they would.
Okay.
The coaches aren't going to waste their time with that.
I love it. It's great. But this is exciting. It's the 3rd largest crowd for the West Virginia game. This is significant because one of the big questions we threw out there this year was how would the program suffer from not, quote unquote, being in the Big 12, from being in the Sun Belt and kind of being that one sport. Well, when you're ranked in the top 5 and having a successful season, that's going to help bring some interest. So this is a huge match. It'll be interesting to see how they come out. It's unfortunate that it's kind of similar timed in the football game, so it won't get probably the numbers that it would be on a normal one. Like I've heard that the West Virginia UCF match Friday did a big number on Plus. So I'm curious to see how they come out on the road environment there. Can that defense slow down that Marshall offense, or do we see like a 4-3 type of game? I'm really intrigued by it.
Gabriel Parada is the Marshall goalkeeper. He's allowed only 3 goals on 61 shots in 624 minutes of play. Now, part of that obviously has to be, for obviously the defense in front of him, which makes his job pretty easy. But they score goals at an incredible rate, 25-3 aggregate score, 4 shutouts so far for Marshall. So this is a tall order. This is a really tall order. But Eric, we go back in the history. When was the last time any UCF team played it was softball, right? Played a number.
They played that juggernaut named Oklahoma, in the Super Regional 2 years ago.
Has any? I can't believe I can't remember this. I don't think it's ever happened. Has a UCF team ever beaten a number 1 ranked team?
Oh yeah, softball beat number 1 Florida in 2008.
That's right.
I was there. I called that a million years ago.
I knew you would know.
I think one of the other sports may have done. I know men's soccer did a 2-2 draw when SMU was ranked number 1 in 2016. That sounds like a Bryson social media tweet right there, Bryson. Look that up. Historically, UCF against number 1 ranked team. Obviously,
I was thinking if it had happened. I forgot about the softball one. I was thinking if it had happened, it might have happened like women's soccer in like the 80s. when
That I
Michelle
don't know.
Akers was there, possibly.
Unfortunately, Drew, we remember a certain basketball game that if a tip-in goes in, we would have beaten the number 1 ranked team there as well.
That's true.
You know,
Infuriatingly
if I won
so.
the lottery, I'd have a lot of money.
You had to go.
You
there.
don't?
I was so happy there for
I'm totally not touching that one for the sake of affecting people.
Oh God.
But,
7.
no, big opportunity.
My own
And
people.
what's the bigger stat here? If UCF wins,
Yeah, give me
There's
the
a
key
very-
here, Eric. What's the stat?
if they win, they could be ranked number 1 next week. No UCF team's ever been ranked number 1. Think about that. Number 1 in the country.
Number 1 in the
That's
country.
You're a national title contender based on that. To do that, I would try to play from ahead. I wouldn't want to get behind Marshall. They're certainly capable. I'm curious. This UCF
Easier
backline-
said than done.
Well, no, but this is the test. Scott Calabrese has preached all year about the depth in the back line defensively. This is the test against this Marshall offense. Can they help Wami Munoz there? And then UCF, look, West Virginia was a great example. West Virginia jumped on UCF with a goal in the first minute and a half. UCF responded. This is a battle-tested team. I'm intrigued by it. We'll see what happens. Honestly, you take a draw. You take a draw on the road here. You're fine if you take a draw.
Oh, you take a draw and you get on that airplane as quickly as humanly possible.
That's hard in Huntington, West Virginia, but that's another story. But
and then the next game would be against Kentucky.
a
Another
desperate
ranked
Kentucky team that right now would be on the outside looking into the NCAA tournament.
That's on the road. So
yeah. But here's
go ahead, Eric.
This is the exciting thing for casual fans. Men's soccer is the only sport that doesn't have a Power 5. It's wide open. Like Akron's won a national title in men's soccer. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like men's soccer is probably the closest sport that we have where anybody can win the championship from any conference.
For one thing, the field is smaller.
48-team field, yeah.
Yeah,
and not just that, but the country in general. And it's a lot more even. It's just a lot more of an even playing field. There really is no dominant men's soccer program. Virginia is about as close as you get.
Right, the ACC schools, right.
They're vulnerable.
But look at last year. Syracuse. Jeffrey, you went to Syracuse. Yeah. When did soccer ever come up? When did soccer ever come up at Syracuse?
I forgot Syracuse had a men's soccer program. I'll be honest with you.
They won the
I thought they had women's soccer and like that and like lacrosse. Women's lacrosse in the fall. I forgot that they had men's soccer.
Hey, guys,
I'm ashamed to admit it, but it's true.
You keep forgetting NCAA hockey.
Oh, come on. A Northeast school is going to win that.
Let's look at the last. It's not necessarily Northeast school. Let's look at the last.
Well, not necessarily, but I think what Eric is trying to say is also that there's a fairly we see the same characters every year in NCAA hockey.
You see either a Northeastern school or you see a Minnesota school. Now Denver does have a couple national titles in the last 10 years.
Right, Denver, but you're also you're also like Michigan, Northeastern, Boston U, Boston College.
Yeah, Boston College, who's actually the last power conference team to win a national title, hasn't done it since that was in 2012.
Yeah.
But hockey, how many programs in the South have a hockey program?
Arizona State has a hockey program.
Arizona State, yeah. Alabama, Huntsville used to have one.
But
I got to tell you, what's unique about hockey is that they're actually coming to Tampa a lot for their championship.
The Frozen Four, yeah.
The Frozen Four. They were here in 2012. They were here in 2016. They were here last year.
Frozen Four is fun, man. It's a blast.
It's I think only a matter of time because we've seen club level.
Every game
really
goes to overtime. It's fantastic.
Club level take off. I think if a number of the Florida schools got together, they could make the jump.
Oh wow!
Because
Florida
and hockey
I can't.
is really starting to get some.
No,
I'm not going there.
Wow.
We've already the additional sports discussion. We have had that before, and if I remember right. I remember if I seen somewhere, I think somebody said that the most logical
men's and track and field
is a men's track team, and that's like the bare amount of like extra funds to put forth for a new team. Hockey is a completely other factor. From an event perspective?
Shout out to the club hockey, UCF club hockey.
Yes, huge shout out to club hockey.
Very good.
Hence, where are UCF ice hockey discussion.
You know what Tampa is hosting,
Empowerment.
Drew, this fall? It's the women's volleyball Final Four themselves. Jeffrey, isn't that a heck of a segue?
It is, which takes us to some history today. Guess what? UCF Volleyball, ladies and gentlemen, today was their first ever Big 12 match. Now, against the familiar opponent, I should say, because they were up in Cincinnati, but they beat the Bearcats in 3-1. Knights are now 10-2 on the year, and the way this Big 12 schedule goes, and this is weird, they're actually playing a double dip with Cincinnati. They play them again on tomorrow, which is Friday at 6 o'clock. But what a start for Jenny Maurer and crew. And I'll tell you one other thing, too. And Bryson, I'll get you to talk about this because you had it on the most recent nightcap, which came out on Monday. They go up to Purdue, West Lafayette. They get handled pretty good by Purdue. Lost it in 3. There were a couple opportunities when they probably could have stole a set, but they didn't. So they come back the next day. They're playing another Big Ten opponent in Illinois. And they manage to come out of there not just with a 5-set victory, but a comeback victory nonetheless. Stats from this match. Emily Wilson had 16 kills. Ava Armour, who is really getting good. I think she's ahead of schedule. 14 kills, 9 digs. I don't want to take away from Emily because she had 10 digs of her own, a double-double. But most importantly, and I think we talked about this, they didn't permit Purdue to beat them twice, right, Bryson? They came back, they get the win against Illinois. Nice little springboard. You split those 2 matches up there against Big Ten competition, and then you go into Big 12 play. They handle Cincinnati. They get another shot at them tomorrow. So, but Bryson, tell us about how important you thought it was that they got that W against Illinois after the game against after the match against Purdue.
It's extremely important. This is a team that's going to be battle tested. And we're not even going to get to the worst part of it all, because if you look at the volleyball RPI rankings, we have BYU number 10, Texas number 16, Baylor 21, Iowa State 27, Kansas 29, TCU 35. UCF is going to have to play all of these these opponents later on.
A backloaded schedule
in the season. Exactly. Yeah. We have reached now a point in the season. I said this in our preview article like a little while back. Is let's see how this team looks kind of mid-October, because at that time is when the schedule is going to switch to a Big 12 gauntlet of a schedule that's going to last for the rest of the season. And I think, and if you're Jenny Maurer, your job is to get your team ready for that gauntlet, because at that point, that's when you're going to see what your team is really made of, because you're going to be going up against NCAA tournament environment teams back to back to back to back with absolutely no rest. Yeah. It is an absolute gauntlet of a schedule. I keep using that word, but it's just the most apt word.
Well, I mean, you have one more against Cincy, you got 2 against Oklahoma, you're at Texas Tech, and then home for West Virginia, Kansas State. And the Kansas State match is on the 14th. Then, and Eric, you were alluding to this, as well. Then stuff gets real, as the kids say.
Right.
At Baylor for 2, home for TCU for 2, at Houston for 2. Home for BYU for 2, Texas at home, at Iowa State, at Kansas to wrap the season. And believe it, the Kansas one's actually the easy one.
Well, they're ranked in the top 25 too. So I mean,
right. So
this team
that's brutal. So you want to be so. I think you're right, Bryce. You want to be playing with house money by the time you get to October 14th.
And these Illinois matchups, this Illinois thing shows that when they are battle tested, they are able to come back. Now, Illinois is Illinois. I looked up their RPI ranking, but I would argue that if they're a Big Ten team, their RPI ranking lies a little bit. So, because they have a lot going against them.
They are really struggling, though. I mean, they haven't really beaten anybody who's any good.
But here's the point. The point is, though, with this young group, they didn't flinch. They were down 2 sets. They blew that second set of that Illinois match. They should have won the second set, lost a 7-point lead. a lot of young teams crater in that situation. This team will not. Like, you might beat them, but it's not because they laid an egg or they just quit. They're not. They're going to fight hard and compete, and that's a credit to Coach Maurer and her positive mindset of, hey, let's shake it off. There's no reason why we can't win the next 3 sets. So that's what's helped them. And they beat Cincinnati in 4. I think it's imperative. You look at it, at Cincinnati for 2, host Oklahoma for 2, as you mentioned. They need to get off to a good start in conference so you could build up enough wins to where when you get to that gauntlet that Bryson has referred to, because I think they could steal some wins there, especially at home.
Oh yeah.
And
then you just collect RPI a little bit.
And that's the key, right? That's the beauty of being in the Big 12. The bad news is you got to play all those teams. The good news is you don't have to be great. You can steal some of those wins and have enough to sneak into the NCAA tournament. Whereas if you were in the American, it's win or the league or bust, basically.
UCF's RPI, by the way, is at 43 coming into this week. So, like, you really want to have as good an RPI as possible going into this gauntlet, so that way you might be able to claw a little bit and maybe play a little spoiler. I think I would honestly, I think one of my hottest takes. Maybe it's maybe a little bit of a hot take for the rest of the season is I think UCF Volleyball is going to upset at least one of the major Big 12 opponents that they have.
I agree with that. I think they could steal a game from BYU or Texas or somebody like that at home. The key, though, is you can't follow that up with a loss to a team you're not supposed to lose, quote unquote, right? And
that's not going to matter with the gauntlet. That's not going to matter.
No, but I'm saying, like, what's weird, and this is what's weird, I think this is what Jeff was alluding to. You're playing Cincinnati back-to-back, which is very strange because if it's not your typical home and home, it's not like, hey, we'll see you in 3 weeks. So now Cincinnati's got the advantage of they're going to adjust. Mm-hmm. And so while a split sounds good, you also feel disappointed since you won the first match. It's a very weird schedule from that. It's hard to get a read. For example, next weekend, they host Oklahoma back-to-back. If you split with Oklahoma at home, a part of you feels like, we left something there. It's a weird schedule to kind of figure out the mindset of this. It's a mixture, and they're doing this to try to save some travel and a bunch of other stuff. But that's why we can't get too far.
It's still messy.
That's a great word. Messy's
welcome to the future of college sports.
Yeah, well.
But the volleyball schedule is definitely quirky, and it's going to get even quirkier with Colorado, Arizona State, and Utah joining next year. Good luck with the schedule maker on that one. Good luck.
Well,
so let's see what happens. But it's messy. It's a good
They get their next shot at Cincinnati, again, at Cincinnati, Friday at 6. Home conference opener against the Oklahoma Sooners, 7 o'clock, Thursday the 28th. 1 week from when we're recording this show. That's going to be a party, man, at the venue, and bringing in the Oklahoma Sooners. Now here's the thing. Like you said, Eric and Bryce, Oklahoma, not the best in volleyball.
First-year head coach, too. First-year head coach at Oklahoma. So.
It seems unusual to think of Oklahoma as not being good at a sport.
This is their weak spot,
Yeah.
But again, that's the challenge, right? Because if you're UCF and you want to make the NCAAs, you probably have to win both matches against Oklahoma.
You're probably right.
Because that could be I think this is a team that could be either one of the last 4 teams in the field, or it could be one of the first 4 out in the field. And it could depend. It could be a small margin of error based on these results, how they do in the conference.
When does the I'm trying to find the 2020, the latest RPI. Is that?
It hasn't come out yet. It should be about a week, either this week coming up or the
RPI
week.
is not out.
Yeah, the latest RPI. I'm going off of the most recent RPI that has been released on the stats.ncaa.org. That's where I always get my RPI rankings. And so they have Oklahoma at 93 RPI right now. So top 100, not awful.
Unofficially.
But
it's an unofficial calculation.
Yes, this is based off games through September 20th. This is based off of yesterday. So tonight's game is not factored into that yet. But Oklahoma, top 100 RPI, not certainly a better than Cincinnati. I'll put it that way.
Yes. They're definitely
yeah. By the way, which takes us as we wrap up here to women's soccer, who are off to quite a good start in the Big 12 because earlier today they knocked off Houston in Houston, Final was 1-0. Katie Bradley scored in the 41st minute for UCF. And really can't, I mean, hey, I feel like given all the news around men's soccer being top 3, volleyball getting off to the good start. Is women's soccer kind of flying under the radar right now, Eric Lopez?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, they just started Big 12. They did pick up the first ever Big 12 conference win for any UCF sports team last week against West Virginia.
Yep.
But yeah, it's kind of weird, right? Because they
match.
had that dramatic match
wild
with
game.
Georgia.
Yeah.
West Virginia was a wild match. They're kind of like volleyball in that their schedule is also backloaded as far as the Big 12. Mm-hmm. They're finding different ways to win, like the Houston match. They got an early goal in this match and then pretty much played defense, win 1-0. They've had to win with their offense, like you referenced last week against West Virginia. They've kind of had to find different ways to win. It hasn't been the prettiest at times, but they find ways to get results. They're getting better and better. Yeah, no, it is. Look at their situation. They beat Houston. Now they host Kansas on Sunday. Quick turnaround there. And then it gets a lot tougher from that standpoint. But they're in the mix. They're like 38 in the RPI this week. That one did officially
at the most recent RPI, yes.
And you look at the other teams in the RPI right there. Texas is in there, 36. You got TCU, Texas Tech, BYU.
To put it into perspective, Houston was 99th in the most recent one. They might be the one.
Yeah. So Kansas that was a must-win. Yeah, but that's going to go up with them. That'll go. That should go up anyway, I should say, if they're played to their potential. But it's always early. But no, the Big 12, it's kind of the most wide open as far as from a women's soccer. There's not that dominant team out there. BYU was ranked number 1 for a while, but they got upset by Utah State. Mm-hmm. UCF finishes at BYU later in the year. So that's what I'm saying. It's backloaded.
Texas Tech is actually the top Big 12 team in the RPI. They're 7-0-2. Yes. Texas Tech at number 9 right now.
Yeah. And so it's going to be interesting. I mean, Bryson, you've got the schedule. You could break down to that schedule for women's soccer, but they got to get – if they're 2-0, which is a great start. They host Kansas. You hope you could beat Kansas, go to 3-0, and keep building on that. The thing that's worth for UCF is they don't have a marquee non-conference win. Now, that Georgia game, again, really haunts them from that standpoint. Yeah. But again, the beauty of the Big 12 is you're going to have opportunities for marquee wins, but they're going to have to win. Like Texas is going to be a big one among others. So that's going to be the key for Coach Sahanek. But you're right. They are under the radar, and I think there's part of Coach Sahanek that doesn't mind that.
Yeah. Looking at the RPI, Kansas is in the 70s. Oklahoma State is 49. So that'll definitely be one to look out for. Oklahoma under first-year coach Matt Mott, who we might be familiar with from who he coached Ole Miss when Ole Miss came to town in the past couple seasons. Their number's 168 in the RPI right now. So
that's not good.
They're going through a head coaching change right now. You know, that's a new
they're thing. Going through something if you're Oklahoma and you're 168.
So they're working on
what's the schedule? What's the schedule breakdown after Kansas for UCF? You're giving me RPI, but what does the schedule say?
That's the schedule. Oklahoma State, September 28th, 4 days after Kansas. And then there's 3 days after that, you go from Oklahoma State in Stillwater to Oklahoma in Norman.
See, that's creative scheduling. You play those two, get it out of the way. The state of Oklahoma.
Yes,
but the other thing, the other half of that though, Eric, is that all those teams only play each other once.
Yeah, correct.
You know, I mean that's the other thing. Like volleyball, there's so many matches in volleyball. I think, I think we were talking about this a little bit off air. I think something's got to give.
Yes.
Honestly, I don't know how, but something's. I mean, that scheduling model feels unsustainable.
Agreed. 100%.
Well, one other factor when you think about all this, and it'll be interesting to compare men's and women's soccer to this regard, because if I remember right, the Big 12 has more women's soccer teams than the Sun Belt have men's soccer teams. Am I inaccurate in that? Because we're seeing with women's soccer,
I don't know about that.
Because women's soccer is playing games like every 3-4 days. Like they're not going to have like a long break of more than a few days. until the very end of the season before they head out to Utah to play BYU. So men's soccer has a whole week to get ready to go and play Marshall and that type of and all that. So I'm very interested to see how these teams respond because I know Scott Calabrese has talked about how the 21st century model and all that, and I'll be very interested to see the difference in both teams depending on the amount of rest time they get between games. I think they're under very different circumstances, the both teams.
There are 10 teams in the Sun Belt in men's soccer. In the Big 12 in women's soccer, there are, this is the most boring radio in the world, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
There you go. Bigger teams. Yeah, bigger teams. Yeah, bigger league.
That's 4 more games that the women have to play as opposed to the men.
Well, and they don't play everybody in the league, right? And they'll have the Big 12 tournament later on. But you know what's interesting? Women's soccer is very anti playing once a week anyway. It's kind of interesting. Women's soccer does not like the 2-semester model. Men's do. It's very interesting.
Well, some do, but not as many as on the men's side, which I also find kind of interesting because we've talked before many times about some of the injury problems in a lot of in women's sports too, right, Eric? I mean, like torn ACLs and everything.
Yeah,
and and I would think that they would also be in favor of that. I think that playing the College Cup in the spring would also be better for college women's soccer as well. I don't know. I'm a little surprised at that myself. Why do you think that is?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I think partly
we've asked Tiff about it before. She hasn't really, she's
not
been
a
diplomatic about it. I think
not a fan of it. I think they just there is something to be said about having an off season, and I don't think I think some of the coaches don't want to have off seasons come in the summer, whereas they liked having that spring kind of to kind of build the team up instead of building it up later. I don't know. It's interesting with the sport of soccer. We'll see what they do. Part of the problem is, they're both about a week or two apart. The other problem is, come August, a lot of times these players get plucked away professionally. So there's a lot of complications with it.
I think that's
has to be sorted out.
I think this was purely speculation on my part. I think the reason why the women's coaches are not as much in favor of a year-round sport or a 2-semester sport, I should say, is because college soccer is kind of higher up on the totem pole than women's professional soccer at the moment. And so they don't view that as a threat. Whereas I think men's soccer sees an opportunity where they could pull some audience from MLS because MLS is kind of considered, Messi obviously notwithstanding, still in the international soccer game, kind of an inferior product. And they feel like they have an opportunity to pull some audience by producing a better product in the college men's game, I think.
Well, the other thing is I think the men's feel they could develop players better in 2 semesters to play in the MLS. Yes. I don't think, whereas the women's side, they feel that their best development is developing them for the U.S. national team or international period. So there's a difference of philosophy there. So
100% correct. Yes, that's exactly what I was trying to get to. So excellent point. Excellent point. All right. I wonder when that's going to come up for a voting. I think we're going to have to come up. All right. Nightcap, Bryson, give us a quick little recap. What are you keeping an eye on for the upcoming week?
So for the upcoming week, UCF tennis is going to be getting underway for their fall schedule. So that's going to be something I'm going to be keep an eye on, and I'll put up on the nightcap. We also
now those are those weird invitational tournaments that they go to, right? The tournaments with the prize money and all that kind of stuff.
There's a college ranked spotlight that's supposed to be coming up. Coming up for the women's tennis up in NC State. That's going to be happening soon. You have the Bedford Cup for men's tennis. So there's the ATP Challenger that's listed on the schedule for men's tennis. So if you want to kind of get an idea of what's in store for the tennis team who has their dual match season in the spring, that'll be interesting. Though next year they are going to be moving the singles and doubles championship to the fall. So that'll be interesting to kind of get this last year under.
They're going the men's soccer approach. They're going to go 2 semesters starting next year with the singles in the fall.
Right. So it'll be
I think that's good. I think that'll help.
That's tennis. A good point. Yeah, I like that. I like that too. It makes sense from it. It's also like, could you imagine? We've seen it too, like at the USTA, how tired the players are. Like when they finally get to the singles and doubles.
Yeah.
After the team championships. Yeah. That's rough. That is rough, man.
So all right. So we got a lot going on. Here's the bigger question.
Golf ball season's going to be going on.
Yeah, golf. All right, golf playing the fall.
On all those.
All right. Let's get to the real. We're dodging the big question, the elephant in the room. Mr. Andrew Glukov. We want to know, will you return to Night Shift postgame this Saturday night after UCF Kansas State? Are you doing that, or are you going to watch a certain other football game during that time? What are you going to do, Drew? Decision.
No. It's definitely Night Shift time.
It's time.
It's going to be a fun night shift because we're not just going to be recapping a football game. We're probably going to be giving a recap on the football game as well if things go certain.
Hey, full disclosure, this past week it was Rosh Hashanah. I mean, it's the high holidays. I'm playing the religious card on that one.
Well, you're ready to argue with Kyle on Saturday.
Only if he's wrong.
Well, it's after sundown. It's okay.
Oh no, that was last week. We're good to go.
All right. Fair. Okay.
I mean,
there you go, folks. Tune in. Night Shift on your favorite social media places.
Yes. Following the conclusion of UCF against Kansas State on FS1, and I'll tell you, I feel like this is and we'll end on this, guys. I feel like this is kind of flying under the radar. This is such a tremendous moment for the program. Our first ever Big 12 conference game against K-State. By the way, great documentary on K-State football that I found on YouTube that I put in the opponent's preview, Know Thy Foe, called The Miracle in Manhattan. If you haven't gotten the chance to watch, it's about 55 minutes. It's narrated by Mike Rowe of Dirty Jobs fame, who I believe might be a Kansas State grad. I don't know. But a truly remarkable story of where Kansas State was in the mid to late 80s and Bill Snyder coming in. And I'll tell you, for me, like, Kansas State has always been a hard program not to root for, since A, they've never really played UCF, and B, they always played like that sort of underdog. And just like UCF, they came from, well, I wouldn't say just like UCF, but very similar to UCF. They almost lost their program and picked it back up and got to a point of national prominence. And it's a really amazing story. They do a wonderful job out there at K-State. And, I think it's kind of fitting that two, former underdog programs who have now made it to the national stage, UCF is opening up its Big 12 conference slate against K-State. So if you get the chance, click on that link, watch it. It's worth the 55 minutes. It really is. It's really good stuff. So for Kyle, the student of the game, the SOTG on social media. For Bryson, it's Bryson Turner. For Drew, Statboy Drew. For Eric Lopez Leap, Eric Lopez Elo. I'm Jeff Sharon, Jeff_Sharon on X. Make sure you follow us on our social media platforms. On X, we're still at UCF Banneret_SBN. On Facebook, we're at Black and Gold Banneret. Instagram, Black and Gold Banneret. Black and Gold Banneret on YouTube. Hit up the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe. You can watch Night Shift after the game, where, as Bryson mentioned, we'll hopefully be breaking down a victorious night for both football and football. And lots more to talk about as well as we head into this another historic week for UCF in this first year in the Big 12. Fellas, thank you again for your time and for breaking everything down for me. For all of us here at Night Shift and the Black and Gold Banneret, I'm Jeff Sharon saying thank you for listening and enjoy the weekend. We'll see you.